In late 2025, NVIDIA became the first technology company in history to reach a market capitalization of $5 trillion. This chart shows NVIDIA's valuation against national economies. The entire annual economic output of India is roughly $4.1 trillion. The United Kingdom is around $3.5 trillion. NVIDIA's singular value eclipses both of them. But the origins of this wealth look nothing like a steady, inevitable climb. In 1996, the company was exactly 30 days away from bankruptcy, and CEO Jensen Huang was on a flight to Japan to beg for a lifeline. For 3 decades, Huang has operated under the intense daily assumption that his company is on the brink of collapse. That anxiety isn't a motivational tactic. It is a default psychological state forged by a series of near-fatal miscalculations. NVIDIA's current position at the apex of the tech industry is the direct byproduct of a corporate culture hardwired to survive by taking massive existential risks. The first of those risks started in 1993 in a California diner. The 3 co-founders correctly hypothesized that 3D video gaming was going to become a massive market, requiring dedicated processing power. They built their first commercial product, the NV1 chip, using a quadric surface rendering system. Microsoft, however, established the industry standard using triangular rendering. NVIDIA's chips were entirely incompatible. The market rejected the hardware immediately. NVIDIA lost its crucial partnership with Sega, and the founders were forced to lay off 60% of their staff just to keep the lights on. Out of cash and out of time, Huang flew to Japan. He admitted failure to Sega's CEO and asked him to convert their canceled contract into a $5 million investment. Sega agreed. With that narrow lifeline, NVIDIA took an immense operational risk. They spent half of their remaining funds to purchase a single, specialized chip simulator from another company that was actively going out of business. They used that machine to verify their new Riva 128 chip design, and then did something unheard of. They skipped pilot runs entirely and asked their manufacturer to go straight to mass production, a one-shot gamble known as a tape-out. If the design had a single flaw, the company would die. The Riva 128 worked. It sold 1 million units in 4 months and proved to NVIDIA's leadership that when faced with extinction, the only viable strategy is to push all chips to the center of the table. By 2006, the company was stable, dominating the gaming graphics market. But Huang predicted that relying solely on video games would eventually stall the company's growth. He directed hundreds of millions of dollars toward a project called CUDA. It was a software platform designed to break graphics processing units out of their narrow gaming functions and allow them to perform general computing tasks. The market reaction was absolute silence. Gamers had no use for it, and the scientific computing community didn't care to learn a new proprietary architecture. Wall Street punished the company for the massive research and development expenditure. This chart tracks the damage as NVIDIA's valuation collapsed from $12 billion down to roughly $2 billion. Huang later admitted that he felt personally responsible for destroying his company's stock price, returning him right back to that daily dread of bankruptcy. Hardware companies traditionally design chips to meet active consumer demand. NVIDIA was bleeding cash to build a highly complex software ecosystem for a market that did not yet exist. The payoff for that isolation finally arrived in 2012 at an image recognition competition called ImageNet, where a deep learning model called AlexNet decimated the competition using 2 NVIDIA graphics cards. Look at this processing breakdown. CPUs handle data sequentially, one fast stream of logic. Graphics processors process thousands of smaller tasks simultaneously. This parallel architecture is mathematically identical to the matrix calculations required to train artificial neural networks. Even with this academic proof, commercial buyers were scarce. So in 2016, NVIDIA spent hundreds of millions of dollars to build the DGX-1, a dedicated deep learning supercomputer. Huang introduced the machine on stage to minimal enthusiasm. Initially, they received exactly 0 orders. The only person who asked for one was Elon Musk, who wanted it for a small, relatively unknown nonprofit in San Francisco called OpenAI. Huang dismantled an internal test unit and drove it to their office himself. By surviving the heavy losses of the CUDA development years, NVIDIA inadvertently laid the infrastructure for the entire generative AI revolution. Today, the world's largest technology companies are effectively locked inside that foundation. NVIDIA's competitive moat is built on software path dependency. A rival chipmaker must do more than engineer a faster processor. They have to displace 2 decades of established CUDA infrastructure. That position held until early 2025, when a Chinese research lab named DeepSeek released an incredibly capable AI model. DeepSeek proved that they could train top tier artificial intelligence for a fraction of the cost that the industry expected. The revelation panicked the market, wiping $600 billion off NVIDIA's valuation in a single day. The drop exposed the underlying fragility of the AI boom. If software models become highly efficient, the insatiable global demand for NVIDIA's expensive, ultra premium hardware could dry up entirely. The threats are now multiplying. Competitors are designing specialized inference chips, cloud providers building their own silicon, and the initial wave of data center construction will eventually mature. Add to that the geopolitical reality of government export restrictions and international chip wars, which actively dictate who NVIDIA is even allowed to sell their products to. A $5 trillion market capitalization does not buy immunity from the volatility of the semiconductor industry. Most tech monopolies attempt to coast on their established dominance. NVIDIA operates on the assumption that their leadership position is constantly at risk. To survive whatever computing shift comes next, Jensen Huang has to do exactly what he did in 1993, 1996, and 2006. He has to wake up terrified and bet the entire company on a future that does not exist yet.